Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. Genderqueer comedian, and I'm using that term comedian rather loosely in this equation, Hannah Gadsby has decided to mock female athletes who have spoken up about being made to compete against men under the guise of mocking men who defend them. Hannah Gadsby is rather unfunny sort of individual. I personally don't find this person funny at all. You guys may think that this person happens to be funny, but I personally don't. Now, it's quite interesting to me how an actual biological woman is choosing to make a mockery out of the likes of female athletes that are choosing to stand up and say, enough is enough. We don't want men in our sports or in our spaces. That's not something that you should be making a joke about or making a mockery about, Hannah. I think it would be best for you. Now, I know nothing is off limits for comedians these days. And look, I'm all for comedy. I have a rather crude and extremely rude sometimes sense of humor. And I don't find anything that Hannah says to be funny at all, especially in this regards, because why in the world would you think that it's actually funny to mock the likes of real women that are doing the best thing for the actual biological sex of women, trying to defend women? Why do you think that's acceptable to actually make fun of? I don't think that's a good thing to do, if you ask me, but according to Hannah, it's a great idea. So let's go up against your own biological sex. Why don't you? Now, the thing is here, that I find also quite absurd is that Hannah happens to be genderqueer. So if you search up Hannah's name, Hannah Gadsby, over on Google, and you look for people also ask, the first thing that comes up is, what are Hannah Gadsby's pronouns? If you don't know who Hannah Gadsby is, she's an Australian writer, comedian, and I guess activist of sorts, and somehow an actor too. So Hannah Gadsby is bringing gender queer voices to the mic. Okay, fair enough. The 46-year-old Australian comic who uses they, them pronouns is the host of a new comedy special, Hannah Gadsby's Gender Agenda. That's something of a tongue twister. Hannah Gadsby's Gender Agenda, which premiered globally on Netflix on Tuesday, this is the scene that was taken that got a lot of people rather upset. Let's have a watch.
It's adorable how so many men are all of a sudden very concerned about women's sport. That's new. That's real new. Like, the idea that men are transitioning to become women so they can dominate women's sports. Like, you know, pick up all those amazing perks you get in women's sports. All those perks. All those perks. Like, you know, women get all the perks in women's. They get kisses and everything. Who wouldn't want to kiss? Her, apparently. Ungrateful. I think it's really disingenuous, you know, because in 2012, a horse won Australia's Sportswoman of the Year. Fucking horse. Chromosomes. That bitch has 4 legs. It is also a horse.
And you have all of the feminists, the modern day feminists, I should say, laughing their butts off. I didn't find it at all amusing. And I have a pretty good sense of humor, I guess you could say. So I don't think it is good or acceptable to mock, yet again, women, especially women that are doing incredible things in the sporting field. Women are trying their absolute best to compete against the likes of real women. But these days, men go, you know what? I found a loophole in this system. I can't beat the likes of men that are, physically more dominant than me. So I can't beat them. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to identify as being a woman, say that that's my gender identity now, self-ID, and then go ahead. No transitioning, no hormones, nothing. I'm just going to go in, and it's acceptable for me to say that I'm a woman, and therefore it is so, and so I can just jump right into female sports. The idea that men are transitioning so they can dominate women's sports, picking up all those amazing perks you get in women's sports, is what Hannah Gadsby said. In 2014, MMA fighter Fallon Fox, a man who claims to be a trans woman, was permitted to compete against a woman, Tamika Brents. And we all know what happened there. Brent suffered a concussion and a fractured skull and had to receive 7 staples to the head. In 2020, Fox tweeted, "I enjoyed it. I love smacking up turfs in the cage. It was bliss." Gadsby also conveniently neglects the fact that these men and boys share locker rooms with women and girls where they undress and in some cases are totally naked in front of them. Yeah, okay. Riley Gaines also talked about the effort involved in removing form-fitting swimsuits, which can take several minutes, while being in the presence of a fully nude 6'1" Leah Thomas. There is an obvious sexual motivation for men who demand to compete against females. In addition, the arousal some experience from humiliating women. In high school sports, boys can easily scoop up athletic scholarships set aside for girls. There are also serious health risks. Peyton McNabb was just 17 when in 2022, during a volleyball game against a rival North Carolina high school, she was dealt a devastating head and neck injury as a result of a spike by a male athlete who claimed to be transgender. And that's not all. And Sal Grover, who I honestly adore, her Twitter is fantastic, I'll have you know. If you aren't following Sal Grover, definitely do so. They still haven't come up with a verdict in the Tickle versus Giggle case here in Australia, which honestly, I don't see why it's taking so bloody long to come up with a verdict, aside from the fact that the judge probably wants to be kind and generous to the likes of Tickle rather than Giggle. The case is truly absurd, if you ask me, but we live in that day and age where absurd seems to become the norm. I'm sick of it. But anyway, Sal goes, interesting that the woman who did a whole comedy special about how women are ignored in society and only men are listening to is now ignoring the women and only listening to the men. A+ for hypocrisy, Hannah Gadsby. A effing plus. Well done. And just reading goes, I can understand in a way the men advocating for their intrusion. They benefit greatly. What is beyond my ability to comprehend, however, is the women who advocate for this. I could not detest their actions more. I definitely agree with that person, because it doesn't really make too much sense, does it? Like, why in the world do real women actually bend over backwards in support of the likes of men taking over female spaces in sports? And they go, oh, I've got no issue with it. Why don't you have an issue with it? Oh, I'm just a polite, kind, and generous individual. Why would I have a problem with it? How about for the fact that you are actually a biological female and a man is entering into your space? Like, does that not register into your brain? Or how about the fact that you've got young boys that are choosing to identify as being girls and then entering into girls' spaces so they can abuse the living daylights out of them? How about that? Oh, you don't care about that. This thing is dangerous. we don't get a grip on it now, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. So again, I'm all for comedians making jokes. Then you can make jokes about all kinds of things. But again, doesn't mean I'm going to see it as being funny, nor do I approve of the joke. You can joke about whatever you want. I reserve my right to see whether or not it's funny, but I don't think mocking women in this sense at all is funny. I think it is quite, I think it actually brings a lot of harm rather than good, you ask me. But anyway, thank you all so much for watching. You take care, you be blessed, and I'll see you all in the next video.